Rain tapped against the windows of Sophia Bennett's small apartment as she clutched the positive pregnancy test in trembling hands. The tiny plus sign glowed like a fragile promise, yet instead of joy, a storm of fear and uncertainty filled her chest. She had dreamed of this moment, imagined telling Ethan Clark and building a life together, but reality shattered every expectation. Ethan had always seemed ambitious, confident, charming, but the man standing before her now was unrecognizable, selfish, and cruel. Their argument had started over something small: money, schedules, a forgotten promise, but escalated quickly. Words that once felt safe and loving now cut deep. "You can't expect me to change my life for this," Ethan snapped, eyes cold and dismissive, his hands gesturing as if her very presence were an inconvenience. Sophia's heart sank as she realized the truth. He would never be the partner she needed, the father she hoped he could become. Her voice wavered, pleading, "Ethan, please, we can figure this out. For our baby." But he turned away, his final words like a hammer against her chest. "You're on your own. Pack your things." Shocked and disbelieving, Sophia stood in the apartment that had been their home, her bag hastily packed, the door closing behind her like the finality of a guillotine. Fear gripped her chest, not just for herself but for the life growing inside her. The bustling city outside, once vibrant and full of possibility, now seemed hostile, threatening, and indifferent. Every streetlight, every passerby, reminded her of the uncertainty ahead. She clutched her coat around her, shivering against the cold and the weight of betrayal. Homeless, heartbroken, and alone, Sophia stepped into the night, her future uncertain, her spirit trembling but unbroken. Every step forward was a battle between despair and determination, knowing that she had no choice but to face the outside world. Pregnant, vulnerable, and completely alone. This was the night that would change everything, the night where survival would begin, and the story of her resilience would quietly, inexorably take shape. Sophia Bennett remembered the first time she met Ethan Clark as if it had happened yesterday. It was at a friend's art exhibit, and he had been effortlessly charming, his laughter warm and inviting, his eyes full of curiosity and ambition. They had struck up a conversation that flowed like a river, effortless, exhilarating, and completely consuming. They shared dreams in hushed tones over coffee and late-night walks, talking about traveling the world, building a home filled with love and laughter, and creating a family that would support and inspire one another. Every moment with him felt like a promise of something extraordinary, a life where ambition and affection could coexist. In the early years of their relationship, Sophia had been the steadfast pillar in Ethan's life. When his career faltered and deadlines loomed impossible, she had stayed up late, encouraging him, offering advice, and reminding him of his potential. She celebrated his victories with unbridled joy and comforted him through failures with patience that never wavered. They had shared small victories, like moving into their first apartment together, and big dreams, like imagining the nursery for their future child. Sophia's support had been constant, unwavering, and often unacknowledged, yet she gave it willingly, believing that love was about sacrifice as much as joy. Their love, at least on the surface, had seemed unbreakable. Friends and family admired them as a couple who balanced ambition and warmth, who laughed together and faced challenges side by side. But beneath the laughter and shared moments, cracks had begun to form, small, almost invisible fissures in their foundation. Ethan's ambition, once a driving force that fueled shared dreams, increasingly veered toward self-interest. Subtle moments of impatience, dismissive remarks, and unspoken resentments began to appear, small enough that Sophia brushed them aside, attributing them to stress or fatigue. Yet even in these early signs, a careful observer might have noticed the shadow of selfishness lurking behind his charm. Ethan's occasional disregard for her feelings, his tendency to prioritize personal gain over partnership, foreshadowed the betrayal to come. Sophia, however, blinded by love and hope, saw only the man who had promised her the world. Every dream, every shared plan, every whispered "I love you" had bound her heart to him, creating a depth of connection that made the coming heartbreak all the more devastating. The stakes were clear. Her emotional investment had been total, and the audience could feel the weight of the impending betrayal, heightening empathy for the woman whose world was about to shatter. Sophia Bennett had begun to notice the subtle signs first: the lingering scent of another woman's perfume on Ethan's jacket, hushed phone calls he hastily silenced, and sudden late nights that carried no explanation. She had tried to rationalize it at first, telling herself she was overthinking, that love sometimes required patience and trust. But the truth became impossible to ignore one rainy evening when she found the messages. Texts, flirty, intimate, and unambiguous, from a woman named Vanessa. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow, knocking the breath from her lungs and shattering the fragile world she had built around Ethan's promises. When she confronted him, the apartment, once a place of warmth, became a battlefield. "How could you do this to me?" Sophia demanded, her voice quivering with a mixture of hurt, anger, and disbelief. Ethan's response was cruelly calm, almost rehearsed. "Don't make this about me, Sophia. You're being dramatic," he sneered. He dismissed her questions, ridiculed her emotions, and refused to acknowledge the life growing inside her. Each word he spoke cut deeper than the last, stripping away her trust, her confidence, and the illusion of safety she had once taken for granted. Her friends were hesitant to intervene. Some offered sympathetic glances and vague advice, while others seemed unsure how to navigate the toxic tension. Family members, though supportive in spirit, were constrained by distance or circumstance, warning her gently but ultimately powerless to prevent the unraveling of her life. Sophia felt the walls closing in, her support system faltering just when she needed it most. She was left confronting the enormity of her situation alone: a pregnancy that demanded care, a partner who refused responsibility, and the knowledge that the man she had trusted above all else had chosen betrayal. Tears streamed down her face as the weight of solitude pressed on her chest. Fear for her unborn child gripped her heart like icy fingers. The reality was stark. She could not rely on Ethan, and the comfort of others was too fragile to protect her. For the first time, Sophia understood that survival would be hers alone to claim. Despite despair, despite exhaustion and heartache, a small ember of determination ignited within her. She made a decision that would define the months to come. She would fight for herself and for the life growing inside her, no matter how lonely or difficult the path. This was her breaking point, and also the moment where her journey toward resilience, independence, and eventual triumph quietly began. Sophia Bennett stepped into the small, cramped apartment she had managed to rent with her last savings, the worn floorboards creaking beneath her feet. It wasn't much: bare walls, a single narrow bed, a kitchenette no larger than a closet, but it was shelter, and for now that had to be enough. The hum of the city outside felt distant, almost mocking, reminding her of the life she had lost and the world she now had to navigate alone. The air smelled faintly of stale carpet and hope, mingling in a way that left her both weary and determined. Her days quickly became a relentless cycle of work, exhaustion, and preparation. Mornings began before sunrise, serving coffee and pastries at a bustling cafe. Her growing belly a constant reminder of both vulnerability and purpose. Afternoons were spent taking freelance assignments, editing, design, small digital projects that barely covered the rent, and evenings were filled with errands, meal prep, and phone calls to potential clients or support networks. Her body screamed in protest at the strain, and the fatigue threatened to swallow her whole, but Sophia pressed on. Each step, each effort was a small victory in the battle for survival. Pregnancy complications added another layer of worry. Occasional dizzy spells, swelling, and persistent fatigue forced her to slow down at times, yet the financial pressure left no room for pause. Society's judgment, too, pressed down invisibly. Stray glances, whispered comments, and the unspoken assumption that a young pregnant woman alone was vulnerable, irresponsible, or helpless. Each encounter reminded her of the precariousness of her situation, but instead of breaking her, it honed her resolve. Amid the struggle, she met Clara Donovan, an older, seasoned businesswoman who noticed Sophia's determination amidst the chaos. Clara was sharp, confident, and compassionate, a woman who had navigated her own share of setbacks and emerged stronger. She offered encouragement, practical advice, and a perspective Sophia had not yet considered: that her hardships could be transformed into fuel for growth and opportunity. "You have more strength than you realize, Sophia," Clara told her one evening, leaning against the narrow kitchenette counter. "Focus on what you can control. The rest will follow." The combination of survival instinct, stubborn resilience, and Clara's mentorship ignited a spark of hope in Sophia. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting, tears mixed with small triumphs, despair tempered by fleeting victories, but it was shaping her, preparing her for the next chapter. Each day she reminded herself why she had to keep going, not just for herself but for the tiny life growing inside her. She was no longer just surviving, she was laying the foundation for a future that nobody could take away. Late one sleepless night, Sophia Bennett sat cross-legged on the floor of her tiny apartment, a notebook balanced precariously on her swollen knees. The city lights outside flickered against the cracked window, but her attention was fixed entirely on the sketches and ideas sprawled across the pages. Over months of struggle, exhaustion, and uncertainty, a single thought had taken root in her mind. She could create something of her own, something that could not only sustain her but provide a stable future for her child. It was small at first, a simple business idea, but to Sophia it was a lifeline, a spark of possibility she refused to let go. She began the painstaking work of transforming the idea into a tangible plan. Late nights were filled with research, market trends, potential competitors, cost projections, and digital marketing strategies. Calls with mentors and experienced businesspeople, including Clara, became a lifeline. Clara offered guidance, challenging Sophia to think beyond survival and envision a venture that could grow, thrive, and endure. Each suggestion sparked new ideas. Each critique pushed her to refine, adapt, and persevere. Networking became her weapon against isolation. Emails, phone calls, and small meetings allowed her to plant seeds of connection despite the exhaustion weighing heavily on her body. The path was far from smooth. Pitch after pitch ended in polite rejection. Emails went unanswered, and setbacks seemed to arrive in waves. There were moments when her body screamed for rest, her heart ached from disappointment, and her mind questioned whether she was capable of turning her vision into reality. Yet, each failure was met with a quiet determination. She would try again and she would not stop. She reminded herself that this was not just for her. It was for the child she carried, for the future she had promised to protect. Slowly, the first signs of success appeared. A small investor agreed to meet. A local client expressed interest in her services, and her confidence began to swell alongside her determination. Every tiny victory felt monumental. A deal signed, a positive review, or a mentor's approving nod. Sophia began to see that persistence, creativity, and courage could outweigh fear, doubt, and exhaustion. Each day of hard work reinforced her belief that she was capable of building something lasting, something that could stand as proof that betrayal and hardship could not define her. The spark of opportunity had ignited a fire within Sophia, a drive that would carry her through every challenge, as she fought not just for survival, but for triumph, dignity, and a future for her child. Sophia Bennett's life had become a balancing act on a tightrope stretched over uncertainty and exhaustion. As her business idea began to gain traction, new pressures emerged. Financial hurdles loomed large, societal judgment persisted, and competition grew fiercer by the day. Each day was a delicate negotiation between limited funds, client demands, and the relentless ticking of her biological and professional clocks. Every decision mattered. Every misstep could derail the fragile progress she had fought so hard to achieve. Rival businesses and jealous colleagues, sensing a newcomer threatening their territory, began subtle campaigns to undermine her efforts. Contracts fell through inexplicably, proposals were ignored, and rumors whispered through professional circles threatened to damage her growing reputation. Sophia quickly realized that skill and dedication alone would not suffice. She had to be strategic, creative, and relentlessly vigilant. With Clara's mentorship, she learned to anticipate obstacles, turn weaknesses into advantages, and navigate the treacherous waters of professional rivalry with finesse. She reworked her pitches, strengthened client relationships, and even found ways to expose the subtle sabotage without directly confronting it, demonstrating an ingenuity born of necessity. Meanwhile, her pregnancy added another layer of complexity. Fatigue, nausea, and sporadic dizzy spells challenged her body daily, forcing her to carefully schedule meetings and workloads. There were days when she collapsed onto her bed, exhausted and discouraged, fearful for both her health and the child growing inside her. Every physical struggle became intertwined with her emotional journey. Exhaustion amplified doubts, and discomfort heightened the fear of failure. Yet each time she rose, she reminded herself that she was building something for more than just herself. She was laying the foundation of a future that her child could inherit, a life of stability, pride, and opportunity. The emotional tension peaked as Sophia juggled the demands of survival, ambition, and health. Late nights blurred into early mornings, with spreadsheets, marketing plans, and research scattered across the floor. She learned to adapt quickly, finding innovative solutions to logistical problems, optimizing limited resources, and even repurposing setbacks into opportunities. Small triumphs, a successfully secured client, an investor impressed by her pitch, a positive testimonial, offered bursts of hope, fueling her perseverance. Through relentless effort, creative problem-solving, and sheer resilience, Sophia transformed each challenge into a stepping stone. The obstacles that might have crushed a lesser spirit instead strengthened her resolve. By facing the combined weight of societal expectations, professional rivalry, and the physical demands of pregnancy head-on, she honed the skill, courage, and determination that would carry her through the next chapter of her journey, toward recognition, empowerment, and the life she had envisioned for herself and her child. After months of sleepless nights, relentless effort, and unyielding perseverance, Sophia Bennett finally began to see the fruits of her labor. Her small startup, once nothing more than a flicker of hope on the pages of her notebook, began to attract attention. Local media outlets picked up her story, drawn to the narrative of a young, determined mother-to-be overcoming immense odds to launch a promising business. Articles highlighted not only her innovation but also her courage, her resilience, and the unwavering commitment she had shown despite betrayal and hardship. The coverage spread quickly, and investors who had once ignored her calls now reached out with interest, intrigued by the combination of talent, determination, and a compelling personal story. The first major breakthrough came when a prominent investor agreed to fund a significant expansion of her business. Sophia's heart raced as she signed the agreements, feeling the tangible weight of her months of hard work finally taking shape in something concrete. It wasn't just the money, it was validation. Every rejection, every night spent balancing exhaustion and ambition, every obstacle overcome, had led to this moment. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized she had done it on her own, without reliance on anyone who had abandoned her, proving both to herself and to the world that her resilience could not be shaken. From a distance, Ethan Clark watched, helpless and stunned. The man who had once dismissed her, cast her out, and ridiculed her struggles now saw her rising higher than he ever anticipated. His heart sank as he witnessed the woman he had betrayed gaining recognition, influence, and respect, success that he had never imagined she could achieve without him. For the first time, he felt the sting of regret, a bitter awareness that his selfishness had cost him not only the love he had taken for granted but also the opportunity to share in her triumph. Even as the accolades rolled in, Sophia remained focused, her vision extending beyond immediate success. Invitations to speak at events, participate in interviews, and network with other entrepreneurs began arriving, building momentum for something far bigger. Among the glimmers of recognition and achievement, there was a quiet whisper of what was to come, a prestigious feature on Forbes, signaling that her journey from betrayal, poverty, and struggle to public acknowledgement and influence was only beginning. The path ahead promised even greater challenges and rewards, and Sophia faced it with the same unshakable determination that had carried her from darkness into the light of possibility. The day Sophia Bennett held the glossy copy of Forbes in her hands, a wave of disbelief and triumph washed over her. There she was on the cover, photographed with confident poise, radiant in a tailored suit that symbolized not only professionalism but the power she had earned through sweat, tears, and relentless determination. The headline celebrated her as one of the most promising young entrepreneurs of the year, a woman who had turned personal devastation into a thriving business. Below the photograph, the article chronicled her journey. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the nights spent working through exhaustion, and the unwavering commitment to her unborn child. Every word affirmed what she had long known in her heart. She had survived, she had fought, and she had triumphed. From across the city, Ethan Clark learned of her success in a way that left him frozen. A friend had handed him a copy of Forbes, expecting perhaps to gloat or boast about her supposed dependence, but as he flipped through the pages, color drained from his face. The woman he had thrown out, the woman he had betrayed, now stood not only financially independent but publicly celebrated for intelligence, courage, and resilience. His regret settled like a heavy stone in his chest as he realized the magnitude of what he had lost. Every glance at her achievements reminded him that his selfish choices had ensured he would never share in her triumphs. The public recognition brought more than just accolades. It brought vindication. Invitations for interviews, speaking engagements, and networking opportunities poured in. People admired not only Sophia's business acumen but her story, her courage, and the strength she had shown when abandoned by someone she trusted most. For the first time since the betrayal, she felt a deep sense of empowerment. She had taken control of her narrative, transforming pain into purpose, and every challenge she had faced now felt like a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Sophia reflected quietly on how far she had come. Pride filled her chest, not vanity, but the satisfaction of knowing that nothing could break her resolve. Every late night, every tear, every moment of doubt had shaped her into the woman Forbes celebrated. She had faced betrayal, fear, and societal judgment, and yet she stood triumphant. In that moment, holding the magazine close, Sophia realized that resilience, courage, and self-belief were worth far more than any fleeting heartbreak could ever cost her. Months passed, and Sophia Bennett's life began to settle into a rhythm she had once only dreamed of. Her business flourished, growing steadily with loyal clients and a reputation built on integrity, creativity, and resilience. Financial security allowed her to move into a comfortable home, one filled with sunlight, laughter, and a sense of safety she had never known during those desperate nights of struggle. Friends who had stood by her through thick and thin now celebrated her victories, offering support, encouragement, and the warmth of genuine connection. Every success, big or small, reinforced the truth she had discovered through hardship. Perseverance and courage could carve a path even through the darkest times. Meanwhile, Ethan Clark lingered on the edges of her story, a shadow of regret rather than influence. His failures, both personal and professional, had left him isolated, and glimpses of his remorse did nothing to undo the damage he had caused. There was no redemption waiting for him, no second chance to reclaim what he had abandoned. The woman he had underestimated and discarded had not only survived but thrived, leaving him to confront the consequences of his selfishness quietly, privately, and irreversibly. Sophia's child, a bright and curious little boy named Lucas, grew up enveloped in love, stability, and protection. Every decision she made was guided by the desire to ensure he never experienced the fear, insecurity, or neglect she had faced. His laughter filled the house, a living reminder of the future she had fought so hard to secure, and every milestone he reached became a testament to her unwavering dedication. The moral of her journey became clear. Betrayal, heartbreak, and setbacks may strike unexpectedly, but a determined heart refuses to be defeated. Sophia had turned pain into purpose, fear into action, and abandonment into opportunity. Her story was proof that resilience, courage, and self-belief could overcome even the most devastating obstacles, and that no one, not even those who sought to break her, could stop a soul determined to rise. In the quiet moments of reflection, Sophia knew this truth deeply. The heart that refuses to surrender can triumph over any adversity. Sophia Bennett stepped into her life with a confidence that had once seemed impossible. The weight of betrayal, hardship, and sleepless nights had forged her into someone unrecognizable from the woman who had been thrown out pregnant months ago. Independence no longer felt like a struggle. It was a source of pride, a testament to her perseverance, and a foundation upon which she had built not only a thriving business but a life of dignity and choice. Every decision she made reflected clarity, purpose, and the knowledge that she was in control of her destiny. Beyond her own achievements, Sophia felt a deep desire to lift others along the way. She began mentoring young women navigating professional challenges, heartbreak, or societal pressures, sharing the lessons she had learned the hard way. Her story became a beacon, illustrating that setbacks were not endpoints but opportunities to grow stronger, smarter, and more determined. Through her guidance, others found courage, hope, and the tools to transform adversity into empowerment, just as she had done. Lucas, her son, thrived in an environment filled with love, attention, and stability, embodying the future Sophia had fought to secure. Watching him explore the world with curiosity and joy, she understood that her journey had created ripples far beyond herself, inspiring resilience and ambition for the next generation. In the quiet moments, Sophia reflected on the path she had walked. Betrayal, struggle, and heartbreak had tested her in every way, yet she had emerged triumphant. The closing truth of her story resonated clearly and powerfully. Resilience, courage, and self-belief are forces no adversity can conquer. Sophia's life stood as proof that even the darkest nights can give way to the brightest dawns, and that a determined heart will always rise, stronger, wiser, and unstoppable.